We've got a few things to chat about for BB28 Overnight Live Feed update. If you don't want any spoilers, now would be a good time to scroll on. So last night in the backyard, they were playing like a would you rather game, asking a lot of questions. They actually do this quite often, but last night, all of a sudden, they decided to attach like dollar amounts. Like, one of the prompts that they did was, would you interrupt someone's eviction night speech and like boo them? And how much money would it take for you to do that? And dollar amounts range anywhere from $1,000 all the way up to like $20,000 to $30,000. Reason that this is important to make note of is later Dee mentions this all to Devins, and she was like, I was paying real close attention to anyone that would do some crazy stuff for $5,000 or less, because those are people that I could potentially use my BB bribe on. And those couple of people were Yash and Lala, according to Dee. However, whenever I was remembering the conversations, I didn't remember Yash agreeing to anything. I feel like he kept saying, I'm not doing anything for less than 5 figures. So I don't know what she's talking about with him, but Lala was definitely doing a lot of stuff for 1K, and a lot of this was like game impacting stuff. So it is a good strategy for her to use to try and figure out who may be willing to accept this 5K bribe. Additionally, later that night, there was a conversation between Devins and Drew and Barrett. Drew and Barrett did out the FAP Alliance, which isn't like a huge deal. It's just the name, and they're going to have to change the name because it is inappropriate. I know a lot of people didn't know in my comment section yesterday, but FAP is an inappropriate term. And I'm not going to explain it, but so production has told them that they have to come up with a different name for their alliance. So the name is going to change, and it's not like it's any secret that the 4 of those people are working together. But Devins was kind of telling them that the icons are interested in starting an alliance with those 4, but it kind of also just depends on who ends up with power next week, on how the dynamics of the house are going to shift. At this same time, Mallory and Melody were up in the head of household room, having like a little bit of a girls' night with Taylor and Lala. There was a lot of conversation about targeting the icons very soon. Later on, Drew and Barrett and Yash join this conversation, and Lala is going in really hard with all of them about how they need to target the icons. Like starting next week, they need 2 icons out before jury. Lala also finds out that the prize pot for Survivor is $1 million, so she knows now that Dee won $1 million, not $500,000 like what she thought the prize pot was. And so I think she's probably going to be pushing really hard for a Dee nomination and eviction. Drew and Barrett were really agreeable in the conversation. One thing that I found really interesting is Mallory kept bringing up Kamu and being like, we can't let him skate by. But obviously, Lala and Taylor were very like shutting that conversation down quickly. They even talked about how if next week is the knockout head of household competition, that they all need to agree to just not pick Kamu until the end. Later on, Melody and Mallory are talking to Drew, and they're basically like, yeah, I'm not doing that. Like, I want Kamu out next week. Like, I want Kamu to go next. We have to target him soon, or he is going to get through because he's so good at all the competitions. We're probably going to have to take a couple shots at him to actually get him out. So they are still on board for targeting Kamu. I really feel like if someone from FAP or the icons win head of household next week, there is potential for them to all come together. But we'll have to see how the head of household plays out. Drew and Barrett do have a quick conversation and just basically tell each other that the head of household room conversation was a really interesting one and that they need to discuss it tomorrow. So we'll be looking for that conversation to take place today. As far as I know, Backyard is closed for the week. And so they'll have nothing but time on their hands. There were a lot of conversations about potentially maybe keeping Haley amongst several different groups. So we'll see if those tides kind of start to turn while they're locked inside. Other than that, not a ton really happened overnight. It was just kind of silly, goofy times for the most part. Dee did kind of make Devins mad last night because she was putting Doritos on him whenever he was asleep, and he woke up and he was not happy that there were chips in his bed, and I would agree with him. So I think they'll be fine though. There's not a ton that's gone on in the BB28 house today, but let's catch up on everything that has happened. So last night they talked about, but we talked about it this morning, that there was a conversation up in the head of household room where Lala and Taylor were kind of trying to float the idea of targeting the icons next. And we were kind of just wondering, what did Drew and Barrett truly take away from that conversation? How are they feeling? And we did find that out today. They have spilled the beans to both Angela and Dee. Devins is also aware of it. He did come in the room at one point as well. He actually had been up in the gym with Taylor, and Taylor had told Devins that the littles, which would be Melody and Mallory now, were the ones that were throwing the idea around of targeting the icons, and especially him. So that's not exactly how that conversation went down, and Devins did find that out when he came back downstairs. He joined the room where it was Angela, Barrett, and Dee, and Barrett was kind of filling them in on the whole situation. Later, Drew also joins the conversation, but Devins isn't in the room at that point. So the crossovers in general all are aware that this conversation took place, and aware that the order of operations for the other side of the house as far as the icons go is Devins first, Dee next, and then Angela, if at all possible. Of course, all of us here on the outside know that Devins has the diamond powered veto, so probably not going to go down that way. Actually made Dee and Angela decide to kind of lock in an agreement with both Melody and Mallory, and they have done that now. So there is a agreement for next week between everyone in the crossovers and Melody and Mallory that none of those people involved in that grouping will nominate each other next week if any of them comes into power. So that portion of the house plans on next week targeting whoever is remaining from Chuck and Haley this week: Taylor, Lala, Yash. I think that's it. So that will be kind of their order of operations next week. Lala really does kind of keep pushing back on the idea of targeting Dee and Angela. Taylor's pretty adamant that she wants icons out before jury, but Lala keeps kind of pushing back on that, saying that they would be good jury members. So we'll have to kind of see where that whole situation ends up landing for the two of them. There has been some conversations, but no real strong pushes about keeping Haley over Chuck. As far as Dee is concerned, it seems like she really just wants to do the opposite of whatever Lala and Taylor want, just kind of out of spite for them, like, starting to push this icons thing this week. A lot of people, Kamu is the other person that I forgot on that list of people that the crossovers and the littles want to target coming up. Kamu is like number one on most people's hit list, but there's been a few conversations with Dee today where she definitely would much rather see Taylor or Lala go over Kamu. She definitely still has some trust in him, which is very interesting. Haley and Chuck had a conversation earlier today with Kamu and kind of aired out some of their grievances with him over not using the veto. Also about the fact that he seems to have really easily forgiven all of the people that lied and flipped the vote last week. Haley was really trying to hone in on the fact that Barrett was a part of that. She will, even though she has said that she's not going to campaign against Barrett, she definitely has. Just a little bit ago, though, she kind of hinted to Chuck that she will potentially be throwing the blockbuster because she is just sick of being in this house. Earlier today, Angela did give her like a quick apology in the storage room. It was literally as soon as they woke up. And then they said that they would talk later today. I haven't seen them have that conversation yet, but there's been plenty of times where like feeds are on all one person all by themselves today. So I don't know what's going on in the other rooms, but I also haven't heard either of them mention having that conversation either. So I guess we'll see if some more stuff pops off tonight. I've had a really busy day. We are in full back to school mode. We had open house tonight, so been a little bit busy this evening. I'm going to go catch up on anything that I may have missed during the time that I was gone, and I'll let you know if anything crazy happens overnight in tomorrow morning's overnight update. Make sure you hit the follow button if you are in need of some BB28 coverage.